Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. I am absolutely thrilled to introduce you to Polly Vacher, who has agreed to share with us her incredible stories I'm not going to tell you what they are because she's going to tell you what they are. Hi, Polly. Thank you so much.
Hello, nice to meet you, Lisa, and hello to everybody.
Brilliant. So, Polly, I think I'd like to start with the fact that at the age of 57, you flew around the world solo. And when I say solo, I mean, it genuinely was you in a seat in a plane and no one else. Would that be right?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct. I was very lucky.
The co-pilot.
No. Did it all myself, yeah.
And then I know that 2 or 3, 4 years later, you did it again. At the age of 60. I mean, that's absolutely incredible. I think, for me, the very idea of flying a plane, let alone flying a plane solo around the world, is quite incredible. Talk to us about that adventure. Tell us about that event. What inspired you to do it, first of all, and then just open up.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, I think, first of all, that a late convert is a fanatic. So I didn't learn to fly until I was 50. And I had previously, though, learnt to skydive, which I did originally to raise money for charity, but then continued. And I have 245 skydives in my logbook. But nothing on earth would persuade my husband, Peter, to jump out of a perfectly serviceable aeroplane. And you all might agree with me, but life is a compromise, and his job took us to Australia, and it was in Australia that we compromised and we learnt to fly together. We had our first lesson on the same day, and before we left Australia, we got our licenses and we hired a little aeroplane and we flew ourselves around the circumference of Australia, up the middle to Ayers Rock and Alice Springs, back across the Simpson Desert, and that's what gave me the love of long distance flying.
Okay, so that's where the love started. And Polly, how on earth could you go from flying around the circumference of Australia to just deciding to sort of tackle the world?
Well, I think it's amazing how people say things and they often don't realize they've actually said anything that's changed your life. But I was doing my instrument rating in Bristol. That's becoming a more a proficient pilot. So I was doing my instrument rating in Bristol, and I said to my instrument rating instructor that we'd had such fun in Australia that we were going to hire a little aeroplane and fly around the States and Canada. By then, we'd got our own little aeroplane over here. We come back from our 2 years in Australia. And she said to me the one thing that absolutely stuck in my mind. She said, "Why are you hiring an aeroplane? You've got a perfectly good one yourself." And I thought, oh, well, yeah, I could. Perhaps I could fly across the North Atlantic. So in 1997, I flew across to America in my little aeroplane, and my husband followed in a jumbo.
I would be in the jumbo.
I met him in Canada, and we flew around the States and Canada, and then I flew back across the North Atlantic. So what's the next thing to do? Because by then I was really hooked on this challenge, and the next thing was to fly around the world via Australia, right down and then back up to America and across the North Atlantic again back home. And then what's the next thing? The next thing is to fly around the world over the North Pole and the Antarctic. So that's the last thing I did. So,
I mean, the memories, the pictures, the scenery, the things you must have experienced. We're going to get onto that, but I just want to go back. So, you didn't just do this, though, for the thrill and fun of doing it. I mean, it was thrilling and fun, but you actually did it to raise money for an incredible charity, didn't you?
Well, yes, I did, because we learned to fly, as you said, when we were older, and we really got back to this country, and we wanted to do something to sort of put something back because we'd received so much, and it's and we heard about this charity which teaches disabled people to fly. It offers scholarships for disabled people to learn to fly. It's called Flying Scholarships for Disabled People. And we wanted to help, so we did help, and we used the flights to promote this charity around the world and also to raise funds for it. And we raised funds by asking people to have their name on my wings. And we had something like 1,500 names on my wings. So we had individuals and churches and schools and dogs and cats and even 2 boa constrictors on my wings. And so basically,
I'm assuming you had the names of the boa constrictors, not the actual boa constrictors on your wing.
No, we had Car the boa, and I can't remember the other one, but one was called Car.
You also had somebody pretty famous that we would all know.
Well, we did have we had Prince Charles, as he was then, he's now King Charles, came to see me off from Birmingham International Airport, who were one of my sponsors. I had lots of very good sponsors. And he came to see me off. So he put his name on the wing and his Prince of Wales feathers, I think his logo thing, on the wing as well. So that was very important. And also Queen Laura of Jordan, who was then patron of the charity Flying Scholarships for Disabled. So she was on one wing and Prince Charles was on the other, King Charles.
Incredible. And how much money, Polly, did you raise?
Well, there were the 2 flights, about 500,000, about $500,000.
Give me some of the experiences you had while you were in flight. Perhaps the most inspiring moments, but also perhaps the scariest moments, moments where you had to really lean in to your faith, because your faith is actually a really important part of your life, isn't it?
It is. And in fact, if I can start not at the beginning, but also by saying that I had, there are 4 seats in my aeroplane. It's about the size of a normal saloon car. And we took 3 seats out and I just had 1. And we put the extra fuel tanks and survival equipment and, a few clothes. I could only take 10 kilos for a year. I carried them. And I landed in this Porto Alegre, it's called, in Brazil. And this man comes up to me and he says to me, "You've got 2 seats in your airplane." And I think, that's a bit strange, because I've only got 1. He said, "Yes, 1 for you and 1 for God." Yeah. And I thought that encapsulated what it was all about, really, because, yes, and flying up there with the clouds and things, and it's very emotional, very deep, and it changes you. You're bound to be changed. But I guess the most frightening thing is actually flying over the poles, because, especially the North Pole, because the North Pole is just flat sea ice. There's no land, and it's just sea ice. And the scary thing is, there are polar bears there. So if you had to do a forced landing, because if you've only got 1 engine and that engine fails, where are you going to go? So you have to be very well prepared. And so I had to get a firearms license and carry a gun and learn how to shoot. So because if a polar bear I didn't want to be a polar bear dinner. You'd have to be my dinner. Did luck happen? But anyway, so you think about it, and then the other scary thing about the polar regions is the compass doesn't work. So you get above about 76 north, so it goes up to 90 north, and the compass just collapses, because of course the compass works by being attracted to the poles. So you suddenly got no compass, and I had GPS, but it was early days, and the manufacturer did not know if it would read 90 north. And so I learned to navigate by the sun I had a sun compass on my dash, and it was a very accurate way of navigating. So anyway, I set off from Scotland to a place called Svalbard, which is a group of islands north of Norway, right up in the Arctic Circle. And from there, I flew, eventually, I had to wait for good weather to fly across the North Pole and down into Canada. And it was a 14.5-hour flight. And I get over the North Pole, and you have to use all the fuel. You have to have extra fuel inside the cabin. You have to use that first, because it's not safe to land with fuel in the cabin. So basically, you use that first. And so I was over the North Pole. I'd gone down, halfway down, only 2 hours left to run. I had 6 hours of fuel in my wings, but I ran out of fuel in the cabin. Just changed onto the wing tanks, and the engine stopped. And that was the most scary moment of all. But I'd done a lot of training, a lot of preparation, and I had a guy I called my flying guru who'd gone up with me and trained me a lot for forced landings. So I was very quick, but can you imagine? So I had all my papers and I had a camera and it was so beautiful and everything was lovely. Suddenly the engine quit. My golly, everything went flying. And literally I did everything correctly and got it going again. But then the last 2 hours, I didn't know why it had failed. Was there ice in the fuel? What was the problem? And so, I kept saying, please don't fail again, and I haven't, and then I thought, well, what if I have to land on the ice? What if a polar bear comes along and how would my husband manage without me?
Everything's just flashing through your head.
So I could see the runway at Resolute Bay in Canada, northern Canada, right up in the north in the Inuit country. And I could see the runway. I can think, please don't stop. But actually, it was an airlock. As I'd changed tanks, I'd pulled in air, and that's what the engineers finally told me what happened. So
the fact you didn't know that, Polly, I think the closest I've ever got to that is running out of petrol and needing to get to a petrol station and praying in the car. I think with the children at one point, just before the school run. Jesus, please let me get to the petrol station. Very different to flying over the poles and your engine stopping. So never again will I be worried about running out of petrol. Polly, you've already inspired us hugely just in this short conversation, but what would you like to say to all those people watching this? What would you like them to take from your story?
Well, I have to say that it's also inspired me to talk to you and to know about what you do, and I think that's fantastic. What I'd like to say, and I always try to say this to people, is follow your dreams. If something crops up, don't think, oh, perhaps I could do that. Do it now, just do it. Because I've always followed the mantra that do what you fear and the fear will disappear. And it does, and I can tell you, it does from experience, and God will look after you. And if it's God's will. And that's really the most amazing message. Yeah. There's something out there for everyone. It isn't flying around the world. There's something for everyone. And it's amazing. We're so lucky to live in this world. It's fantastic.
Absolutely brilliant. Polly, what's next, do you think? Do you have...
Working on it. Well, for my 80th birthday, because I'm 80, I don't know if you said that, but we did 80th birthday. It's a whole year's celebration. My husband can't wait for me to be 81, which is on Monday, because he's so exhausted, he says, for all that we've been doing. But the highlight was to go to Zambia, and we went on a very special private trip with a friend who runs a charity out there. And there's a school there which doesn't have any accommodation, and the headmaster walks 5 miles to school and 5 miles back every day through the bush. And so maybe we'll get started with getting something moving out there. We're working on it. Don't give up. Never give up.
I feel like we need to get you to Spring Harvest, Polly, in 2026 to share whatever that story might be.
I'm very happy to do that. I'd be very, very privileged to do that, because I always feel that even with whatever I've done, flying around the world or driving my donkeys or we helped quite a lot with we had wonderful Ukrainians in our village. We had 50 Ukrainian families come to our village. It was really wonderful. You learn something from everybody. And I find that so exciting. So you might enjoy listening to what I've done, but I enjoy listening to what you've done too.
Yeah. And actually, it's brilliant to listen to stories. And we're going to be focusing on that in Spring Harvest this year. So our theme for Spring Harvest this year is No Greater Story. And we're going to be looking at the story of God. And if you're not currently booked into Spring Harvest, we'd love to see you there. We've got some incredible speakers that are coming, notably Alexandra Drew, who's the CEO of Faith in Later Life, who, like Polly, believes that actually God's calling is on our life, regardless of our age. Polly, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I could talk to you for hours, and I knew that you've got more to share. So perhaps we'll do a follow-up, I think, just to hear a little bit more. But in the meantime, I wish you all the best, and I can't wait to hear of your next adventure.
Well, I hope that you have a wonderful time at Spring Harvest too this year. I shall be so interested to hear about it.
Thank you.
Okay.